Hi, everybody. Dr. Lee Burge here, and I'm going live today. And I'm kind of excited about the topic that I'm going to kind of deep dive into today. And it's a topic that's includes a personal story and some other a conversation that I had with my dad also. So, welcome. If you're watching live, go ahead and drop me a hello so I can shout out to you. And if you're watching on replay, thanks for taking your time to watch and drop a replay in the comments so I know that you've been here. I'd like to come back after I'm done recording and say hello to you as well. And thanks for watching. Um, so, you know the graphic that I posted today said, I always knew I wanted to have kids. I just never intended to become a mother. And that is 100% true statement for me. And, we can talk about different definitions of mother and what that meant to me at the time, but I think it will become clear as I share my story with you today, what I meant by that when I thought that. Some of the roles that we take on in life, we step into purposefully, and then there are other roles that are kind of thrust upon us, and sometimes it's hard to try to figure out and really magnify those roles and make them our own and do them to the best of our abilities. Growing up, I grew up with a mom who worked. She was a school teacher and she worked in education most of my life. There was a period of time that she worked in my dad's clinic. He was a chiropractor, and so I grew up in a home where I just automatically figured that I would work too once I had kids. It was never really a thought that I had that I wouldn't continue to work. And so I went to school, and then I went to graduate school and became a chiropractor like my dad and some of my uncles and my cousins, and started my own practice and was working. And so, at the point in time that we decided to start having kids, that was a conscious decision, and I became pregnant. Worked all the way up until the day before I had my oldest. It was Halloween. We were at home in our apartment. We were watching Seinfeld and Friends because that's what was on TV at that point in time, and fielding trick or treaters ringing the doorbell. Um, and went into labor and had my son the next day, my oldest. And um, I was 28, I was a doctor, and I was still scared out of my mind that I did not know what I was doing. In fact, when it was time to take my oldest Jacob home from the hospital, I looked at the nurse and I said, I don't feel qualified to take this tiny human home. I mean, are you really gonna just let us leave with him? Like, what if we don't keep him alive? Like, what? There's so many things that could go wrong. And my mom came for 2 weeks, and all of a sudden, literally, my mom became the smartest person on the planet. I mean, she just knew everything, and she showed me so many things that I didn't know. And I felt like, okay, maybe I can do this. So I decided to actually go back to work when my oldest was 4 weeks old. There were patients that I wanted to see, and the other doctor I was practicing with had some patients that he wanted me to see while he was on vacation, and so I went back to work. That did not work at all. My heart was definitely back home with my kids, and actually, with my kid, and actually, I ended up getting sick. And so it was kind of an interesting time for me because I just thought that I could do everything and all at the same time. And so as I'm sitting in my house, not feeling well, with my baby in my arms, 4 week old baby, I decided to call my dad and to have a conversation with him about my life and what's happening and how I'm feeling and what to do next. And it was an interesting conversation because he asked me how many chiropractors there were in the little city where my practice was. And there were 8 at the time, including me. And he said, I'm sure that you're a great doctor and you love your patients and you care about them, and you try to do everything you can for them. And that's really amazing. Um, but there are 8 other chiropractors in your little town where who can serve your patients and probably do just as well. Um, Ouch, but okay. Um, and then he asked me, how many people are there in the universe who can be Jacob's mom? And you can tell, because I still get a little bit emotional when I think about it today, that really stopped me in my tracks. And I thought to myself, there's only one that has the role of being Jacob's mom. And so I knew exactly what my next step was going to be. It wasn't going to be an easy step, and it was a step that was really scary for me, but I knew what I was going to do. And, um, and, and all of a sudden in that moment is when I realized that I was making a decision that wasn't about me anymore, that I was making a decision about what was best for our family as a unit and not me as an individual. And that was like a huge aha moment for me. I think that is the moment that I stepped into the role of being a mother. It's easy, especially in those first few weeks of having your newborn, of, feeling like a babysitter a little bit. I mean, they're cute and you love them and you squeeze them and they smell good and, all of those things. But the bonding thing happens, at least for me, it did over time. And so that moment, that decision that I made to step away from practice and to become a stay-at-home mom was that moment where my birth into motherhood really began for me. Now, I don't. I mean, I'm kind of not completely plugged in anymore to the young moms things that they talk about. So I sincerely hope that this whole thing about stay-at-home moms versus going to work moms has like been put to rest a long time ago. If it hasn't, it should be, um, because the bottom line is there are as many ways to be a good mom as there are moms out there, and it has very little to do with whether you work or not. So, like I said, I hope that's not a thing anymore, but it kind of was a thing back in the mid 90s still. And so, I had mixed reviews when I decided to do this, um, whether it was a good idea according to other people or not. But regardless, I, pushed ahead with my plan, and sacrifices were required, right? I mean, that anything worth doing is worth working for, and so sacrifices were required. And it didn't take me long to realize that the path of stay at home mom for me was going to be the path where I would probably experience the most growth. The easy path for me would have been to continue in chiropractic practice. But it wasn't until later that, I was able to look back and see that. Um, there, there are things that happen. Like, did I ever feel like I was losing myself? For sure. I remember a time I had 2 kids at that point, and I was on an airplane, and I was sitting in the front in the bulkhead, and I had a diaper bag full of board books because I had like a 3-year old and a 1-year old. And an older gentleman came and sat down next to me, and he read on the whole flight War and Peace in Russian. And I remember, I had books in my bag, but they were all board books and had really big pictures. And I remember thinking, I used to read books, I used to be smart. I don't know. And so did I feel like I was losing myself? Yeah. I also remember a time when, so I had my two, they were 4 years old and 2 years old, my 2 boys, and I was way pregnant with my third, my daughter. And, and we were at the grocery store, and I was checking out, and the, the, the checker asked me when I was due, and I was so like caught in the moment. I was like, due, how much money is due? I need to pay the bill so I can just get out of here and get my kids home. And she kind of looked stunned and she's like, no, I mean, you're pregnant, right? And I'm like, and I remember looking down at my belly and then being like, yeah, yes, I am. Yes, I am pregnant. Very pregnant. And, and she said, that's what I was asking. When are you due? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. The end of April. So, were there moments where I was losing myself? Of course there were, right? Um, and was it hard? I mean, yeah, every day is hard. Parenting is hard, right? And I think that we all know that. And there's one question that you really should never ever ask a stay at home parent, and that is, what do you do all day? Because going from a very structured life that I had to the very unstructured life of stay at home parent, was a huge challenge. And I remember someone had asked me that, and I remember thinking, well, the kids are clean, the kids are fed, and no one's killed each other. That's what I did all day. And it took all day to do that. So, just completely different experiences for me than I had had before. Um, so now, like, I'm just going to fast forward. I know I'm skipping some good parts, but those are parts that will be in later videos, right? I'm gonna fast forward 18 years basically, and my oldest is graduating from high school, and we're getting ready for him to fly across the country to drop him off at college. And honestly, when my kids were little, I really never thought that day would come. I mean, I thought that I had so much time left. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in that moment and you're thinking, wow, how did this happen? And once one of your kids actually leave, right? They fly, they they go to college, they go to school, they get married, whatever they do, whatever they choose to do. Once one of them actually does it, then you can no longer pretend that it's not going to happen, because now you know that it actually happens, and you become aware that in some ways you're actually working yourself out of a job. And it's an interesting time in a parent's life, I think. And so I realized really quickly that I needed to start figuring out what I was going to do when they left. And it scared me, to be completely honest. And so, like it says in the movie The Princess Bride, it's one of our favorite movies here in our house. Vistini tells Fenzik and Inigo Montoya, if a job goes wrong, you go back to the beginning to figure it out. And so here I am, almost an empty nester mom, trying to figure out what the next step for me is. And I decide to look back on the beginning of this whole process and see if that can give me any clues as to where to go next. And you know what I figured out about that little theoretical journey is that there was a girl who was a lot younger than the woman I was today, who had the courage to strap a tiny human in a car seat and leave a hospital and bring him home and figure out not only how to keep him alive, but to help him thrive for the next 18 years. That there was a girl who had the strength and courage to add more kids to their family, her and her husband's family, and somehow figured out how to be the mom that they needed. And now there was this woman who was stronger and hopefully wiser, who had more experience, who was more resourceful than that girl had been 20, 22 years ago. The girl who couldn't figure out how to take a shower when she had a newborn um, because she knew if she put the newborn down, they would start to cry. And so she would wait for her husband to get home to hold the newborn so she could figure out how to shower. That girl. There was this woman now who, like I said, was more resourceful and more wise and more experienced and even stronger and had more courage than that girl did. When that girl pushed through and did all of the things that she did. So that is what the gift of going back to the beginning gives us. It reminds us of the strength that we had back then. It shows us how much more strength and courage we have now. And hopefully, it inspires us to be able to tackle the mountains that lie ahead of us, because we can look back and see the ones that we've already summited in the past with less strength and less experience than we have right now. And that's the gift that going back can give us. I would not change any anything I ever did as far as the choices that I made, with walking away from work and being a stay-at-home parent. And again, during times in my kid's life, I did go back to work. And so this isn't a conversation about staying at home and being at work. That's so tired and dead. But this is a conversation about embracing the role that you have, as a parent, to deep dive into it, to magnify it, to own it, to put your own spin on it, to make it your absolute own, and to realize that inside of that role, there is space for growth, that it is inside there that you figure out that you can be the best mom that you were meant to be, the best wife, the best sister, the best daughter, the best worker, the best whatever it is, the role that we're talking about at that moment, that is what is there for you. I have this thing that I say to myself all the time, and that is no regrets. I really try to squeeze the most I can out of the moment that I'm in, because I am fully aware at this age and stage of my life that I don't always get a second chance at those moments. Sometimes they come back around and sometimes they don't. And so that's the challenge that I want to leave you with today, that you embrace your roles, that you make the most of them, that you explore the heck out of them, and realize that sometimes the roles that you're thrust into are the roles that you're meant to have. And that those are the roles that allow you the space for the most growth as a human. And that ultimately you realize you live your life with that no regret sort of mantra, that you make the most out of the moments as you have them in front of you. And I mean, it wouldn't be a live video, right, as a life coach without doing this little plug at the end, right? Where I, say to you guys that growth is possible and you don't need a life coach to do it. But if you did want a life coach to do it, that I am here to help you. So thanks for listening today. I have loved being able to share my story, and thank you for listening. And that's all. Dr. Lee Burge signing out. Bye.